Reading picked up a point on the banks of the River Sinsel to kick off an extra busy festive period. While some believed it was a positive point, it still leaves us very much in the basement zone of League One. Welcome to episode 363 of the TOSM podcast. Joining me a little bit later than he planned this week, as always, is Ross. We're going to have a chat about the Imps, which is a crazy name for a football team when you think about it, really. It's just
Weird one.
Really, really weird.
First badge in football, too. But anyway, I digress.
Yeah, Ross, you want to apologise to everyone first, don't you?
Yeah. Well, yeah, it was blowing a bit of a hoolie in Maine this week.
Don't know what that means. Do it in English.
Blowing a hoolie? That's an English phrase. What are you talking about?
Literally never heard of it.
Welshman. My wife likes that phrase. That's one of the British phrases that she's picked up off me. But yeah, no, it was blowing a bit of a hoolie up here in Maine, guys. So sorry about that. But I was out of power for about 48 hours here. So I've had a fun little bit of time clearing my fridge out, which was full of what we'll call forbidden steaks. And
well, do you know what? I was actually going to ask you about food because it's very nearly Christmas because we're doing this. We're recording this on Thursday, which was not by design. We wanted it much earlier on in the week, but whatever. It was blowing up whatever he said it was doing. What would you say is your favourite piece of Christmas food? Or Christmas themed food?
Yeah, no, that's a good question. Since I moved to America, the humble mince pie has gone way up in my estimations because they're not common. When I tell people that mincemeat is fruit-based, they look at me like I'm insane over here. So that's always funny. Pigs in blankets are the obvious go-to, but really, for me, there's nothing better than a really good roast potato, like ones that are done really well. Goose fat and all that good stuff. So that's actually, do you know what? That's not. Yeah, do you know what? I'd kind of looked at roast potatoes as a given. Yeah. Well, you know what's funny though? They're not of it. So I did Thanksgiving dinner for the first time here this year, and I had to make mashed potatoes because that's what the Americans expect with their roast dinner on Thanksgiving. But I made roasties as well because I am still English, believe it or not. And I made the best roast potatoes I've ever made in my life. I was very happy. Those things were covered in Mexican-based lard, and I recommend basically.
All sounds all right, to be fair. I mean, pigs and blankets, I always think it's a bit of a cop-out.
Really?
For me, it's bread sauce. I absolutely love bread sauce. And the reason I like it is A, because it's very simple. B, because you don't tend to get it. You can make it anytime, obviously, in the freedom of your own kitchen. But you can't get it ready-made until Christmas. And I just like it. And also because no one else in the house likes it. So I just sit there with like a vat of it, basically, and just
there you go. There's something that you eat around the holidays here called green bean casserole, which is sort of like a mushroom based casserole with green beans all over it and like crispy fried onions, and I'm the only one in our family that likes that, so it's a good time for me when that comes around. So I'm hungry.
Yeah, I know. Well, we're hungry for points, and we got one against Lincoln, which we're going to talk about right now. In the recap.
Come rain or shine, it's time to relive the latest match action with the recap.
This podcast is sponsored by ZCZ Films, Reading's oldest ultras.
Alrighty, before we talk about that well-earned point or two drop points or however we see it across the fan base, there's been a massive split in how that result is currently viewed. Massive thanks as always to ZCZ Films. They don't give us Christmas bonuses because we don't expect them and we don't need them, but they have supported us financially all the way through 2023 as a calendar year and continue to do that into 2024, and hopefully they will continue to do it into 2025 as well. So thank you very much to those guys. Right, Lincoln, the Imps. Lincoln City FC. Do you know, we plan to record this on Monday, and I think having had time to reflect on it, I kind of changed my opinion quite a lot on the result. I think in the grand scheme of things, it's a positive point. But it's only a positive point if we actually pick up some wins over the festive period. And we're going to talk about those that block of four, which are going to come quick and and fast. Quick and fast, is that even a thing? Whatever.
Yeah, whatever.
But we've got 4 games in quick succession. That's the phrase I was looking for, quick succession. So it's a platform to build on it. Do I think we played particularly well in the game? No, I don't. I think that some of the reaction was probably a little bit over the top in terms of performance. We'll start from the very beginning, which was, I think, 3 minutes where we conceded that goal, something like that, 2-3 minutes.
Yep.
And for me, that goal is up there with the horror show from Nibs against Shrewsbury for their first goal, when he could have just cleared it, but he didn't. Honestly, that goal against Lincoln was absolute trash. And I, looking back on it several times, and, Ross looked at it just before we jumped onto this recording as well, just to remind himself of that. There was one big issue really, and that was Michael Craig, because he, if you watch that goal back, he stopped his run. He let the guy cross the ball in, and we all know, as football fans and as very average, in my case, football players, you always stop the ball at source. Doesn't matter if you're defending or not. You always try and stop that ball from getting into the danger zone. Ross, talk us through that goal, because I thought it was absolutely disgusting, to be honest with you.
I think this is a really interesting one, because I think I'm going to you're making me want to break this down in a video sometime, because I'm still watching this thing in like quarter speed. And yes, Michael Craig makes a mistake, but I can see what he's doing in the slowed down replay. There's a line of 4 players that I'm looking at here, and that line is Dorset, Makairu, Craig, and Abbey. And the 4 of them together sort of conspire. And you could throw Holmes in here too, but Holmes is closest to the guy he's marking. It looks like a big defensive communicative mix-up again. So as Dorset's lost his man down the side, which has happened quite a bit since Dorset came back into the team, by the way. Worth noting, he hasn't been quite as good since coming back from injury. Michael Craig is then distracted by the guy arriving late into the box who's calling for the ball. So Craig, I can see him turning around basically to look at the guy and make sure he's cutting out that angle. The issue is that leaves only Makairu chasing the ball back, and he's not able to get in the way, basically. So he's stuck chasing a man. And then Abbey is right in front of the guy that Holmes already has. He's not pressing the guy either. So there are 3 guys there, really, with an opportunity to press the person who's making his way into the box, and none of them do it. This one, for me, is a communication issue, but a lot of our goals come from that right seam. And people getting into the box too easily, especially when they're coming from wide positions. So, yeah, I think it's worth noting Dorset not quite as good since he's come back. However, this is the only shot from Lincoln all game, right? They don't do anything again for the rest of the game. There is 68% possession for Reading in the first half. So for me, this is sort of the aberration in the game. And we were totally in control of this one. I'll finish up my point here with the what this is starting to feel like, this little stretch to me. Do you remember the second half of Paunovic's first season when Reading were quite comfortably in the playoffs and we slowly sort of drift our way down? That, for me, is how we're playing right now, where we've got a lot of games where we're thoroughly in control, in my opinion, but we can't quite, we're not clinical enough, and we're not finishing our chances enough, and that's causing issues. Maybe a little less in some places, but like I've said a lot recently, I think we've been playing a lot better since November, and we're playing like a more like a top 10 team, like more like this sort of team, like Lincoln, a team that we, again, restricted to 32% possession in the first half. This is the level we're at for my money.
I mean, people keep telling me that Craig's in the team to defend, right? He's brought in to be defensive. Like not a linchpin, but everyone's like, we've got a backbone now. He's in the team. He doesn't defend that goal, and ultimately that if on the balance of the game, I suppose you look at the 2 disallowed goals that we did have, and the goal we actually scored that stood. It basically cost us 2 points, that goal, because as you said, they didn't have any other footings in the game, no other shots, no other opportunities, no other clear-cut chances to be able to get anything out of the game, and he didn't stop that ball. You could look at the defenders, I guess, as you said. you can look at Button's position, and we're going to talk about the goalkeeping situation kind of later on in the pod because we've got a nice email about that. But this is kind of the issue really, and I'm still struggling with Craig to see what he actually brings to the team. I want him to succeed. I want all of our players to succeed, but I'm still not sure what he's actually bringing to this football club at the moment. And that goes back to the way that Sellers sets us up. I don't think it's the right formation to be playing. There's a number of issues there, really. I guess moving on as well, my other concern or my other issue in the game was that, Nelson Abbey is there to defend. He's there to marshal the defence. He's there to stop the goals in the purest form going into our net. There were a lot of times in the game where he became basically the ball carrier because no one else in midfield was carrying the ball and moving the ball forward until Charlie Savage came on the 20 minutes before the end or whatever. And
I'm gonna put a pin in that going. Go on. That's his job, Ben. Okay. So on the right, the way Reading play, right, with their centre backs, on the right side, they play a passing centre back. And so they played Bindon previously, and now they're playing Tom Holmes, who it's quite funny to think about that time. We're talking again about the 2021 season when he was playing at right back a load in Yeadom's absence when he broke through. And one of the reasons he was playing there is because he can pass. So he recorded a really high passing accuracy in the first half, Holmes. His job, Reading put a lot of quick passes when they build through the right, but when they build through the left, it's much more carrying the ball based. So they've put Abbey there, who is by far the highest ball carrier on the team. Like, he carries the ball like 5 times more a game than anybody else on the team. And it's something we've seen work in the Premier League. Sheffield United are a good example of when they were good a few seasons ago. They'd have overlapping centre backs that would make their way pretty far up the field by carrying the ball. So for me, that's why Abbey's carrying the ball forward. It is what he is being asked to do. And you can debate whether that's a good idea or not, for sure. But I think he's being asked to do that.
And I guess that's where my frustration comes, because you shouldn't. I like my defenders to defend. I'm old school, right? I want my midfielders to get on the ball and be the ball carriers. And we've got ball carriers in the team. They're just not being played. And that, time and again, I had this time last year when I wrote a piece about New Year's resolutions and, with Paul Ince, like I said, the midfield was an issue then. We got a new manager. The midfield for me is still an issue. It's all right. There could be so much more of a balance there. And actually, you just want your defenders to defend. We've got players that can get on the ball if they're allowed and to play that way. But against better teams, we're going to come unstuck, as we've seen already. We're going to get hammered if he keeps doing that, because that's what he's been up to do. And that goes back to the manager. It all goes back to him really and what he's trying to do. So, that's kind of where... Can I
say something really stupid? I want to say something really stupid. So we kept 68% possession that first half, and by the end of the game, we had quite a bit again. Let's say something really dumb. So we are a pressing team right now. If you look at the stats, we are one of I think we're like almost in the top 3 maybe for passes per defensive action from the other team. So we get in people's faces pretty quickly and try and get the ball back. This is something that, so possession, getting the ball back really nice and quickly. Who does that remind you of? Oh, it's 2008 to 2012 Barcelona. And that's the next step, right? What's the best way to defend? It's by having the ball and making your opponent chase you over and over and over again. I don't want to watch necessarily. I don't love possession football. But against teams like Lincoln, where we can keep that much of the ball, I'm all right with playing like that, whereby we're keeping the ball forever. Sure, maybe we're not defending well. Doesn't matter when they don't get a shot off in the entire game, because we have the ball for the vast majority of the game. So another day, like the second disallowed goal in particular is not offside. So, we win that game. I think people feel a lot better about it. It looks like we've just gone there and dominated that team on their own patch. And we've done it against a team that are, a few points outside of the playoffs. So I don't know. I'm much more positive than you, I guess.
Well, I'm not. Yeah, I mean, for the last pod, I got accused of being negative.
That's what we need.
I think it's not me being negative. It's being realistic. Like, I think looking at Lincoln, so objectively, I looked at Lincoln for about 10, 15 minutes, right? It was probably must have been mid first half I did that. It wasn't the second half. And I just thought, God, they're rubbish. And with all due respect to Lincoln, and they were ninth at the time. And I was just like, this is how poor this league is, right? And again, it goes back to my frustrations with how we are set up in games and what he's asking these players to do. Because, all I want us to do is go on a rampage of winning games 1-0. That's all I want, right? I just want us to be consistent. I want us to be boring. I want us to be predictable and pick up points, right? All of which is kind of completely beyond the realms of where we actually are. So, if we go and win the next 3 games 1-0, fantastic. That's brilliant for me, because that's exactly what I want as a fan from a personal point of view. I fully appreciate others want us to get on the ball and all the rest of it. And, it's not, I don't want to come across like I'm being negative, but we're going to get relegated at the moment. The way we currently are, and the way, we keep coming away from games going, oh, we nearly did this, oh, the ref was this, or, we had 2 disallowed goals and stuff. That can't continue, because we're going to get relegated and we're going to get cut adrift. And that's my concern heading into January, is that we then look at the table and we're like, oh yeah, we're like 6, 7, 8 points away from being safe, which is, it's just worst case scenario stuff. So all I want us to win, is games. That's it, as everyone listening to. And there were some positive elements to the game. Like I thought the ball through from Dorset was superb. I thought the finish was great from Nibs, who at the moment is on a real hot streak. Sam Smith showed some good flashes, but again, he doesn't get what he needs in the game, which is balls down the middle. He needs balls on the floor. He needs to be able to take people on and get shots across the box. He's not able to do that because the midfield isn't set up that way. So that's everything I look at. I go, okay, that's good, but it could be better, because we've got other players that could do that role. That's kind of where I'm at, really. And it's in the grand scheme of things, it is a good point. It is a positive point, because as others pointed out against Oxford United, they were 7th when we played them. We got a point off them as well. So, we're able to mix it with these teams. But I just feel that with anyone else in charge, we'd be able to pick up 3 points from these, and we'd be further up the table than we are now, points deduction or not, and I don't think anyone's crying out for a title charge or a promotion push or playoff stampede or whatever. We just want to be mid-table safety and kind of know that we're looking up rather than down for once. And it is difficult. It is really difficult.
No, that's fair, because
one thing that was really weird, I think, was Mark Bowen being in the away end. What were your thoughts on that?
I'm not sure about that one. It's a little bit odd. I feel like he's I hope everyone was nice to him, I suppose. I don't really know what did he think was going to happen with that one? I if I was in that position, I just wouldn't want to spend an afternoon with everybody telling me how to do my job for 2 hours while, something stressful related to my job was happening right in front of me. So maybe I would have picked, with the coaches or the hospitality, whatever. But yeah, whatever, we all remember Mike Ashley in the crowd with his top off, enjoying a beer or whatever with the Newcastle fans. We have some of the players in there as well recently. So it happens.
The players was fairly regular. That's been going on for quite a while, and I kind of understand that to a point. I assume that that's got less and less as things have got progressively worse on the pitch and off the pitch as well. But I just... as anyone knows, I'm a big fan of Mark Bowen, have been, always written positively about him, met him a few times, really, really great guy, or comes across like that. But his behaviour recently has been a little bit odd, in the fact that he obviously went on national TV and, threw the owner under the bus. And I'm not going to say that's a bad thing, because he deserves that, but it's still a little bit of an odd tack to take when you're still employed by that person, I guess. And also the communication from him has not really been kind of on point really with the fans this season. And then to go in the away end for that game, I'm not sure what he was going to learn really. that's kind of what I'm like. Is he going in there to go, actually everything's all right, or is he just going in there to go, everything's really awful? I'm not really sure on the thinking behind that. I don't know.
It is an odd one. I saw so I don't think this is the case at all, don't worry, but I saw somebody from a different team online sort of suggesting, oh, how's Mark Bowen done with you guys? It seems like, things have really gone downhill at Reading since he, joined as sporting director. I was like, no, you've totally missed the point there about what's been going on at Reading. Mark Bowen is not like the guy that we're sending, billboards to his house with, "Hey, get out of here," sort of stuff. So I don't think he's the one. But it does, to your point, about it being a bit odd this season, it does at least raise that, maybe there are a sub out there that aren't as thrilled with him as others are. I don't know. I maybe he's trying to get a different perspective on the game, right? In terms of literally how you watch it, right? Like sometimes when I coach, I'll go to the other side of the field to see what's going on, and walk around at different angles and things like that. So it is an odd one.
I guess from a fairly positive point of view, he did well to pick that one over, Leyton Orient, for example.
He was just happy that we finally won an away game, and he was like, right, now I can go to an away game. Maybe he's just an away days lad, he just loves it.
Do you know what? The crux of all this is that, we picked up our first sort of win against Wickham, late November for the first time in over a year away. And we've got kind of another sort of not loss, if you like, away from home as well. And I think from my point of view, mentally, I'm like, well, we've won away now, so everything's fine again away from home, when in reality it's really not. And actually, I suppose when you reflect on that, to keep picking up points away from home is kind of the key, really, isn't it? You want to win your home games, but also you want to keep ticking along away from home. And so I guess in isolation, when you look at that kind of where we've been as a club on the pitch, it all in all, it kind of is a positive result, I guess. I'm saying that really tentatively. I don't know if I'm convincing myself or you or anyone listening that it's a positive result. But
if the ball goes in, if the ball is allowed or the goal is allowed with the second goal, I think we're all looking, all right, here we go. We beat Wickham away from home, sure. But they've been on a pretty downward slope recently. And a lot of the teams that we've managed to beat recently have been on a bit of a downward slope of their own. So fair enough. But with Lincoln, and I'm looking back at just the general stats here. We went to their place after not winning away for a year and finally getting a win. Came away with 15 shots to 4. They didn't get a single shot on target. We had 66% possession, double the number of passes, way higher pass accuracy. We absolutely played them off the park. The only thing that we didn't do is score. And there's definitely stuff to be worked out there. But I think, if all of the legal goals were allowed in that game, then we win it. And at that point, we're saying, all right, this is where we're actually at. We're a team that can go to top 10 clubs in this league, because it's not that good, like you talked about, and beat them comfortably, not just beat them, completely play them off the park. So it's really hard to obviously I sound a bit like a naive optimist on this show, I'm sure. It is hard to keep saying, I promise you we're good, when we're in the relegation zone and have been there for 2 months. But we're so much better than this guff with their stupid imp badge, right? And we're going to beat a bunch of other teams like this season. I think we'll be out of the relegation zone by the end of January at the latest, and we might even be out there by the end of this month, personally.
Honestly, and I've said it time and again, I don't care. I'm honestly, historically, I've obviously got people and players that I think are fantastic. I absolutely love them. We'll talk about that later on, actually, in terms of past players. Managers as well. I'm not keen on Sellers, but obviously if he turns it around, great, fantastic. You can all send me a piece of humble pie if you want, and I'll happily do that, because I do not care. I just want this football club to be successful. And I guess it's more like you're saying, oh, we're good. I kind of am on those lines a little bit, but I see more potential in the team that's just not being met by formations, by players, all this kind of stuff. So we're on the right lines, I think. We're just not really doing it consistently or in the right way, in my opinion. But yeah, look, I mean, it was kind of there was some good points to take out of it. There was some kind of things to work on, and we'll talk about Wigan later on in the pod as well. Let's move on to what we loosely now call the mailbag, because we've got a few little bits to talk about in there and a few other little news items. Is that a thing? Yeah, I suppose it is.
That'll work.
Which we'll come to. So yeah, we'll have a short break, and then we'll be back with some mailbag thingies.
Keep up to date with all things Reading FC. Follow the Tilehurst End on Facebook and Twitter.
This podcast is proudly sponsored by ZCZ Films. Remember, if you want to get involved in sponsoring the show, drop us an email to thetilehurstend@gmail.com.
Welcome back to episode 363 of the Tilehurst End podcast. A couple of bits, actually, before we move on to that. So, we were talking about Mark Byrne before the break. Obviously he chose to go into the away end, and we're kind of questioning that. But actually, we've got no idea what it's like to work in the kind of environment that he's working in. So, each to their own. If he wants to do that, crack on. It's not a bad thing by any stretch of the imagination. And I'm coming from the point of view where I missed 3 home games in a week because I literally couldn't bring myself to go because I was like, it's just everything's rubbish. But I've kind of got over myself now, and as a result of that, I wasn't on the pod last week, which is why it was so successful numbers wise, because Ross and Bobbins stepped up, stood in, jumped in, whatever, and it was really great. So thank you. Go on.
I'm sorry, I cut you off while you were doing a nice thank you. That was awful. That's the best I deserve, though, because I don't think I'm such a crap host, Ben. Like, seriously, this is not. This is why I don't get bothered by the football, like the state of the club, because I'm more interested in recoveries and interceptions and things like that. And like as long as there's football happening.
Yeah. But from my point of view, like I hadn't watched the 3 games, right? So there's no way I'm going to jump on a podcast and go, let's talk about all these games, because just for me, like it's. If I haven't been or I haven't watched the game or whatever, there's no way I'm going to talk.
Sure.
Try and talk about it, because like it's not. I just don't think that's what people want to hear. That's just my personal opinion, really. But you guys did a fantastic job. I really appreciate it. Yeah. Bobbins is always great. Bless him, the little idiot. He writes some good stuff as well. I saw you give him a shout out as well, and I've been writing a column for like 4 years.
Well, I'll give you a shout out this weekend. Then we'll make while I'm in my jet lag stupor. Maybe or maybe not in the stadium, I'll send you a shout out.
I was writing a match day column during COVID when I couldn't physically go to the games. I mean, come on. I should have got an award for that.
Something like that.
In my head, I did. Anyway, shut up. Doesn't matter. We've had an email from Patrick Bale. I nearly said Boyle. Bale. Okay. We've said it before, we say it again. We absolutely adore an email question. Love it. The more email questions we get, the happier we are, because it's just brilliant. And I like reading them out as well, because it's a bit like, I don't know, like an agony aunt type thing. Is that, do you know what I mean? Not a therapy thing.
Well, no, that's
on this morning, there was this segment with this old lady, and people would ring in and she'd talk them through all their problems and stuff. It's a bit like this.
Yeah. We're the back pages of the teen magazine on how to navigate.
Yeah.
Right, move on. Talk about football.
Yeah. Well, anyway, it is about Reading. It's not about puberty. Right. Okay. He says, and I quote, and people always think I'm lying when I say this, but he's literally written this. Great show, gents. One of the few podcasts that I subscribe to and keep my attention.
Nice.
Not my words. The words of Patrick Bale, Ross. He loves it.
Nice. Thank you, Patrick. Totally football show.
Something for discussion. On episode 362, backstory, you touched upon our goalkeeping situation, and as Button hadn't done much wrong, it's difficult to swap him out. I do tend to agree, however, looking at the stats, we rank as second bottom of clean sheets, and he's actually inserted a hyperlink, which I did look at, and he's right. He is right. I know we had a Dower 0-0 at home to a shocking Burton team, but I'm struggling to remember the others. A goalie is more than a shot stopping, as a good keeper commands those around him. Unless we figure out a way to keep consecutive clean sheets, what did I say before? 1-0s are the future. We will never rise up from this division. Keen to hear you discuss it. Patrick from Shropshire. I love that. And he's also put in brackets, the place where we suffered a shocking 3-2 loss to Shrewsbury, where I unfortunately saw live with my daughter.
So
there's emotional baggage there as well.
Yeah, that's a bad one. It's a good question, though, isn't it? Clean sheets are a tough metric for goalkeepers, because they're so defined by like what else was going on around them. So like last season, or like a couple seasons ago when we were playing Luke Southwood for a little bit, there was a period where he wasn't able to keep a clean sheet, and I think that there were parts of that were on him, and then there were parts of it that were on the fact that we were completely naff in the first half of Paunovic's last season. So that was part of what was going on there. But communication that was mentioned there is definitely a problem with Button, and that's kind of goes back to that that first goal I was talking about, the Lincoln scored the other day, whereby there's 4 players in a line who are just not communicating properly there. And I think a lot of that goes back to Button, because you talk about goalkeepers commanding their box. Button doesn't do that. And he doesn't communicate, and like organize his players. We saw that in the goal that was scored a few weeks ago by Carlisle, where Bindon and Button are just having an argument rather than cutting out the cross. I think this is why Holmes has come back into the team. Because I think Sellers knows he's not quite as good on the ball, but he's fine. He's changed. If you watch Holmes now versus where he was in August, clearly 2 months on the training ground playing in Sellers' style has changed his style a bit. But he communicates and he talks, and he was on his man when Reading were scored on there. And he was the only one in that group of 5 guys who you could say is on a man and still communicating. So, yeah, I think there's something to be said for Button not stringing together clean sheets. But I think that the email, by touching on communication, is kind of hitting a large part of the issue there for me.
I mean, let's be honest, we've not had a keeper, as in keeper that you want to keep since Al Habsi, really.
Yeah.
Obviously Martinez was in there as well, and he was great, and people rightly look back at his loan spell with great fondness.
I enjoyed Raphael at times. I enjoyed Raphael.
Yeah, but again, the temperament was wrong for the club at the time. You look at Al Habsi and you just know what you were going to get. But honestly, he was just great. And I don't know if that's because it was kind of a fairly positive time for the club in a lot of respects. I don't know, but he was just very, very good. And I think looking at our goalkeepers now, I would probably make a swap. I probably would. I probably would put Joel in for Button.
Do you know what's funny? I thought you were saying make a swap for Ali Al Habsi there, and I think he played for Palestine maybe the other day, so he is still available, still out there.
Yeah, you should work your magic. You should go networking and get him on the pod, because that'd be a great show.
That would be a good one, actually. He seems like
try and make that happen. Do some networking. Someone you know must know him.
All right, I'm working on Habsi right now. Ali, give us a call if you fancy chatting.
If you're listening to this, yeah,
that'll be a good one.
Somehow, if you're listening to this, let us know. Yeah, I mean, it's a great email, Patrick. Really appreciate you A, listening, and B, kind of taking the time to send your question in, or theory or whatever it was. But for me personally, I would swap the goalkeepers. Yeah, but realistically, I don't think he will. I don't think he will.
No, I don't think he will either.
So
but I'm with you.
Right, what did I have down? We had the first question I asked. I mean, we didn't really get too much engagement, which you probably expect this time of year, really. What present would you give the club apart from a new owner? Yeah. And then number 2, if you could have one Reading FC player, past or present. Nearly said future. I was like, how does that even work? It's like the free ghosts or whatever at Christmas. Like, how could you have a future Reading player? Nonsense. Round your house for Christmas dinner. I'll start again. If you could have one Reading FC player, past or present, round your house for Christmas dinner, who would it be and why? Bobbins has changed his name to Baubles, which is just weird. There's no need for that. I know it's Christmas, but that's just nonsense.
No, he does that every year.
Well, the answer to both questions I asked, he put Graham Murty, which is fair, I guess. Okay. Benjamin Vickers, the Benjamin Vickers mailbag, which I think we're kind of unofficially sponsored by now.
Pretty sure.
He said Shaka Hislop. We'd have jerk chicken, rice and peas, and Guinness punch afterwards.
Do you know that Shaka is a pundit over here? We still get quite a lot of Shaka on TV, which is nice. So you still find him.
Is he on ESPN or something?
I think so. Yeah, I think it's that one. I'm trying to remember now which channel it is over here. But yeah, he actually suffered something happened to him on air recently. So I hope he's doing all right with his recovery and everything like that. Can I give you my answer quickly? I want to go.
Hold on, I'm just going to do the mailbag.
Go, yeah,
Quick one on Shaka Hislop. Shaka Hislop was one of my first heroes ever, not just in football, but just ever. I love him, absolutely love him. Alistair says past player would be Yaku because he'd keep your spirits up. And then the present would be Harvey Nibbs. I think Harvey Nibbs would be pretty good around the dinner table, to be honest. I think he'd be pretty good.
I think so. He'd buzz around. He'd get your gravy to you nice and quickly. Yeah, I think I agree.
He was. Who would you have around the dinner table then, past or present?
Yakubu. I think that would be very, very funny. Yeah. I just love them. He's got a bit of that. We talked about Royston Drenthe with Nick Blackman a few weeks ago and how he was a bit of a character and all these kinds of things. But I think I'd like to, I don't know, I feel like Yakubu's got some stories. But I don't think I'd be able to tolerate him for longer than a couple hours. Like, I'm sure he's a rowdy lad or just an interesting lad. But I think just with him being a bit of a cult hero and a cult player, I'm inviting Yakubu over for dinner.
I'd say he's probably had one of the best smiles this club has ever seen, Yakubu.
Yeah. And he scored.
He had such a smiley, great face.
Yeah. I just liked Yakubu. Well, I thought it was in that era where maybe, and again, we talked about this with Nick, whereby, Reading were starting to get away from what had made them into like this club on the rise when they picked up Yakubu. And certainly that continued to be the case. But at the time, it wasn't completely clear to us yet that was what was going on, I don't think. And I just found it very amusing when we had Yakubu. He is a classic Barclays player.
I got more text from people in my friendship group that weren't Reading fans or interested in Reading than... Rather, when Yakubu signed, I got the most texts off my friends who didn't care about Reading because they were like, "Oh my god, can we come and watch Yakubu?" I was like, "Well, I don't think he'll play much, but yeah, crack on."
Yeah,
like whatever. Yeah. And they did. They all came to watch him because he was a big draw. Like he was a real, Americans call it marquee signing, don't they? But he was massive for us at the time.
He's your
in terms of
he's your franchise player. That would be the term that they use up there.
He was.
Yeah.
Mine would be Liam Moore because I'd love to ask him what happened and why it happened.
Yeah,
he was captain in this club in the most traumatic worldwide thing you could probably have, really, apart from an apocalypse, I guess.
Right.
He was kind of a legend, and then he wasn't. He was publicly outed by the club, and then he wasn't. Like it was all just really, really odd. And I actually think he was a good player. I actually think he was really, really good. So for me, I'd just love to sit there and just pick his brains. But I don't know what we'd eat. Yorkshire puddings, maybe? I don't know.
Yeah.
But I just think he'd be really good value from a Reading point of view to kind of ask him all these questions that I've got. Because we haven't heard from him, have we? He's not really done too much on Reading since he's
No, he has, and he was someone who used to talk a little bit, but yeah, he's certainly gone quiet since leaving Reading. I think he kind of got, for good reason, very tired of social media. So that was a large part of it for him, unfortunately, I think. So, but yeah, we wish him well.
He was always really well thought of by staff at the club as well. Everyone I spoke to was always like, Liam was great. Like he does a lot for the community trust, blah, 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 blah. So yeah, I'd just be really interested to pick his brains, to be honest.
Yeah.
The other one I thought of was Bobby Mihailov, who was the Bulgarian goalkeeper that we had. I think he signed in 95 after the 94 World Cup. And there is a urban legend that he only signed for Reading because his agent showed him the playoff final that we had in 94 against Bolton, which we lost. Everyone knows we lost. And he thought that Wembley was our home ground. That's why he signed.
Nice.
And then he turned up at Elm Park. In the middle of Tilehurst, and he was like, "What is this place?"
Yeah.
So I'd get him around. I'd get him around.
There you go.
Yeah, I mean, crazy. So yeah, they're the two. Talking of misunderstood people, Ajaria has left the club of what we have been told is mutual consent. Thoughts on that, Ross? Ajaria going?
I find it a bit of an odd one because, like, we discussed Ejaria at the start of the season and whether he would be able to make an impact now that we're down in League One, and maybe his skills would be even more useful or whatever. But I think the thing that by that point it seemed quite clear to me that whatever was going on between him and the club, it just wasn't working. It wasn't going to work out, and I think we both said we've probably seen the last of him in a Reading shirt, this summer. So. Yeah, it's been nice to see, like the highlights of some of his good performances again, but most of those are 2 years upwards now, really more like 4 years ago. So I think that he's been one of these players that suffered from expectation for a long time, whereby we think, oh, once we get him back, we'll be good again. And it just hasn't really been the case for such a long time. I feel like watching him in his last couple seasons, with that Fulham game removed, obviously, it was more like watching. It was like watching Mamadi Kamara or Makairu or someone like that, whereby it's somebody that you can see flashes of talent at the moment, but they're not the full complete project. That's a little bit harsh to throw Kamara and Makairu together because they're different stages of their career, obviously. But yeah, so it's a shame with Ejaria, but I think if you look at the 4 seasons that he spent here, you can kind of nicely split it up into the first 2 and the back 2. And the first 2, yeah, great player. And on his day, one of the best players in the Championship, let alone League One. But the last 2 seasons, something hasn't been working out for him between him and the club, and it's been quite clear for quite a long time it's not going to work out. So probably the best move for all parties at this time.
Yeah, I mean, 100%. I mean, I would imagine doing very loose calculations that his contract, as we know, is due to expire in the summer. So July of this year, next year, 2024. We're not there yet. So 200 grand, maybe 250 ballpark ish, I guess, which is, where we are as a club is an awful lot of money. That's other people's jobs to protect, really, in terms of pulling that wage in. I do think that he's been made, a scapegoat, a little bit like Liam Moore we talked about earlier, by kind of consecutive managers. And I think some of the comments publicly by those managers is not, for me, has not sat well at all. By all means, go after people in private. That's between manager and player. That's part of the course in football. But actually, to have consecutive managers really call him out publicly, I just don't think that was ever going to end well. And I don't think it reflects on the man management of those managers at all, really. So yeah, for me, it's tricky. It is tricky. Yeah. We'll see what happens with that and where he pans out. So it's going to be interesting to see where we go from that one, really. Talking of other people leaving the club, we are told. Well, this is a difficult one, really. It's without being dramatic, it's kind of, we have some information, but it's not the information, if that makes sense. So we know that there's redundancies that's come out today via different channels. We just don't know where those redundancies are happening in terms of which bracket of the club, which department of the club. And I think, as with most things in the club at the moment, this may have been planned. It may be to do with relegation. It may be to do with the dire financial situation in the club. But again, we're in a situation where as fans, we're trying to piece together the information whilst also remembering that actually these people are losing their jobs and it's their livelihood, and that's the most important thing here. So, yeah. If anyone is listening to this and they're affected by the redundancies, we wish you the best of luck moving forward, regardless of what department or what job you fulfilled. It's absolutely horrendous, and we know as fans that this is where we're at as a club. But we have to remember that we're dealing with real people here, and it's their mortgages and their bills and everything else. So,
and same as we said, like when people, these are some people who will have been not paid on time as well in recent times. So like in terms of like a redundancy package or whatever, I'm not going to speculate, obviously, but you wonder what's going on there too. So yeah, it's really heartbreaking, especially around this time of year. So and I feel like with a lot of people ending up who work for a club I would imagine that maybe you know the people who work at the club better than I do, but I imagine most people who work for the club support the club too. So
Yeah.
So losing a job at the club you support has got to be even a bit more of a kick in the teeth than just losing a job at Specsavers or whatever. So it's always a weird phrase, but I guess my heart goes out to those people.
Yeah, I mean, it's we don't know exactly who is due to lose their jobs or has lost their jobs in this past week. As we said, we don't know in what departments. We kind of have an idea, but that's not, for us to kind of speculate really. So yeah, look, it's horrible, and it's where we're at, and it's just trash, absolute trash for those people. So we do share our kind of good wishes on behalf of the podcast, and I guess fans listen to this as well, and hope that things improve for you guys moving forward. We're going to look at kind of like a truncated. Is that a good word to use?
I like that word. Yeah, I like it.
Yeah. Well, look, the games are coming in quick succession. We established that earlier. We kind of got 4 to look forward to in the next week and a bit. So we're going to start with the preview against Wigan, which is 3:00 on Saturday, live at the Select Carlisle Stadium. So we're going to do that in the preview right now.
There's another huge game ahead for the Royals, so be loud and be proud for the big match preview.
Alrighty, 4 games coming up in the next, week and a half, really. Wigan, first of all, first up at home. Our friends from the north, we great kind of connection with those guys over the last few years for obvious reasons in terms of how our clubs have been run, or rather not run. So yeah, it'd be good to kind of see those guys really. And my experience with Wigan fans has always been really positive, going up there and just, they're good people. Good people. So, we hope that after Saturday they continue to have an all right season and keep picking up points, really. Ross, we could talk about team selection, but I think deep down we know that he's not going to change it, really, even though he probably should, to be on the more attacking foot. What do you expect from the game on Saturday against the Latics?
Tricky to know, because Wigan kind of had the start that I think a lot of Reading fans would have wanted to have, or the reaction to a points deduction that a lot of Reading fans would have wanted Reading to have, and that they took an even bigger points deduction than us at the start of the season, I think, and yet they burst out of the traps, and they were out in the relegation zone really quickly from what I remember. Now they've started to slow down, and their last 5, they've only won 1. So they've actually won fewer games than us in the last 5 in the league, which is, saying something. You really got to go some way there. I think it's at home. We're already playing some pretty decent football, like I said. We should be able to dominate this game, in my opinion, and win. I do think we need to get back on winning ways, though, because if we don't, then we're going to start to have to talk about this sort of malaise again. And you really don't want to be sort of, mucking around with not being in good form when you are in the relegation zone. So I think we'll win this one because we're going to start to falter after coming out of the traps really hot. But if we don't win, then especially going into a busy period, like you say, maybe some of my concerns are going to become a little bit more to the fore, I'd say.
Yeah, I mean, looking over what they've got, they seem to have a fairly settled squad in terms of players starting. I mean, they're 17th in the league to 23 points, which quite honestly is dream world compared to where we are at the moment.
They have 7 points deducted. So I'll go look this up while you continue. Sorry.
Yeah, I mean, they've got some all right players. They've got Wyke up front. Is it Wyke? That's how you say it. Doing a Tim Della here, but yeah. 6. He's got 6 goals. Not too bad, is it really? Right. Humphreys, he's got 6 as well. So yeah, look, I mean, they're fairly settled. I like the manager as well. I think he's he's done quite well to settle them down. I think they have had a bit of an interesting season, but they've been able to kind of pick up the points and keep ticking over. And realistically, you're looking at them to be sort of mid-table. I agree with you. We have to win our home games. Mm-hmm. This is a really good opportunity to do that. We've got 2 away games in kind of quick succession, with Peterborough away on Boxing Day, and then Cheltenham, almost a week away next Friday, which, again, that's a must-win, Cheltenham away. Forget Peterborough. That's going to be a very, very difficult task altogether. And then we have Exeter at home on New Year's Day. So you've got 3 games that you'd look at, and you'd really be targeting 9 points. Like, you don't want to be going into those games and trying to settle for a draw or nicking something off them. You really want to come out and start really positive against Wigan. That'll set us up nicely for this block of 4 games. Mm-hmm. And then look at Cheltenham and Exeter as your next kind of point levels. Really, as we've said, we've always got enough in the squad to be able to compete with these these teams. We just don't do it.
I almost would have liked if we had a reversed. I was going to say, like, the order of these, I wouldn't mind if it was a little bit like, I don't love that Peterborough second, because if we have a bad result against Wigan, then we've got to go and take our hardest game of the 4 games while we're on a downward trend. Like, if we had Cheltenham right after Wigan, that'd be nice, because that does feel like money in the bank, because they are rubbish. And then Exeter have been playing absolutely dreadfully since we smashed them 9-0. So it would have been nice to have one of those 2 second, and then we go at Peterborough last in this sort of group of this larger group of games. But reality is what reality is, so I can't complain about that. But if we don't get off to a good start against Wigan, in this block of games, Peterborough could be a tricky one on Tuesday, because they are second and they're playing relatively consistently.
I mean, it's absolutely foolish to say, but if we get 9 points out of those 12, mm-hmm. that would currently put us in 16th.
Yeah.
Which obviously, it won't be the case, because, other teams are playing, of course, and they'll pick up points and drop points and whatever. But, if someone said to you at the end of this block of games, you'd be 16th, you'd snap their hand off, wouldn't you?
There's a reality that I can see, like I can. All right, this will be the end of my needless positivity and optimism or over the top naivety, but I can see a reality where we're out of the relegation zone by the time I'm in the stadium on January 1st. I can see that being a reality for sure.
Christmas is always a really key time for clubs that are trying to do something. And by that, I mean, not just coasting in mid-table. The amount of games that you have and the lessen the recovery time and maximising the squad, as we continually say at the end of these pods on the previews, his team selection is really telling of where he's currently at in terms of how he expects to kind of do in these games. And again, that probably sounds like a really obvious thing to say, but I think against Wigan, he will start with exactly the team that started against Lincoln on Saturday. However, Harvey Nibbs has been ill this week. He's not featured really much in training at all. So there is likely to be a change in Ben Elliott coming in almost like a straight swap, even though I don't think that's the right thing to do. I like Ben Elliott, but I don't think a straight swap is the right thing. Anyway, stop talking about the midfield.
We talked about wanting to put Elliott further inside. So if I didn't know that Nibbs was sick. That's the worst thing you could have told me, because he's been playing great. But if that frees up the position for Elliott to come inside and play more centrally in that sort of attacking midfield position that Nibbs has been doing recently, I could see him. That could be a breakout game for him. So, silver linings.
Yeah, well, I mean, we'll see what happens there. We'll see what happens. But I think, it will roughly be, if there's one change, it's because it's forced. I think he will, in his head, will want to set up exactly how he set up against Lincoln. Then it depends how the result goes in terms of how that moves to Peterborough. We get a win against Wigan with that team. He's not going to change it for Peterborough. So it is very potentially interchangeable, but there is a reluctance there, I think, to start certain players for whatever reason. And so kind of moving forward, you have to look at the back end of that block of games in terms of Cheltenham, Exeter, and say, look, we've got to get 6 points out of these. Exeter, as you say, have been absolute dire form, like really, really bad form. And if we're not turning up on the first game of the new calendar year to win, what's the point? Worst case scenario, we lose all those games, and we really are like cut adrift, and we're going to get relegated. Simple as that. However, we get 9 points, and we start looking a lot higher up than we previously were. So, it's it's interesting times. It's a lot of points there to play for. I think we have a little break after Exeter. I'm not entirely sure. I haven't looked that far ahead. I think there might be a little break.
Yeah, I think you're right, because it gets weird with the EFL Trophy game against the Brighton children and all of that kind of fun stuff.
That's straight in, isn't it? Yeah, that's the 8th, isn't it? Is that the 8th?
Something like that. Yeah, I'm not 100% sure off the top of my head. 9th.
Yeah. Maybe. Anyway, look, there's a lot of games to look forward to. There's a lot of football. A lot of people are obviously going up to Peterborough and then across to Cheltenham, which is a cracking part of the world. And they're really trying hard to accommodate away fans this season. So, enjoy that. I don't know when we'll be back. I'm not sure when we'll do our next pod. I want to do like a wrap up of this. We'll work it out. There will be one. Yeah, there'll be one between Christmas and New Year, probably. Who knows? There will be.
There will be, yeah. We'll work it out. I'll be back in the UK, so it'll be easier to find a time that we can do all of that together, I think. So looking forward to recording from the right-hand side of the Atlantic.
Exactly, yeah, across the stormy seas. Yeah. Before we go, just to sign off with, the players were at Royal Berkshire Hospital this week, as they always do, which is, I love that. It's one of my favourite things of the season that they do. I think it's fantastic. I know a lot of other clubs do it, but it's just it's such a worthy cause. So it's great to kind of see the photos and the players doing that and visiting the kids and stuff, because it's just brilliant. And talking of kids, my son actually listens to this. He's 8 years old. Some of you might know that, which is why I was cringe when Ross starts swearing, because I'm like, oh my God, don't swear. That's fine. It's all right. You crack on. Yeah. But I want to just I know that he normally starts listening to it just before he goes to bed. So he normally gets like mailbag and he's asleep. But if he does make it to the end of the pod, I just want to say well done. He is currently the top scorer for his under-9s team. He's got 13 goals this season, which is great for him. And they've kind of stepped up. They've gone from 5-a-side to 7-a-side. And it's it's been a big step up for him. Like big step up for him, but he's all the players have coped really well with it. But he's kind of really chuffed for himself to get those goals. So awesome. Long may that continue, and well done, mate. Really proud of you. Thank you. Thanks to everyone who's listened to this first half of the season with myself and Ross taking over from
we appreciate
the wonderful Mark Mayo who left in the summer. We do, don't we? We do appreciate the listens and we do appreciate the interactions, and we just like chatting about football, really. Particularly Reading, I think. Do we?
I think so.
Yeah, we do.
I'm going to let you in on a little secret, listeners. There was a little technical difficulty right then and there, so this is why I'm looking forward to recording from the right-hand side of the Atlantic next week. When the internet connection's a little bit closer together. There are sharks gnawing on the undersea cable right now, and I'll be happy to be shot of them next week.
Yeah, so it's all those whatever, sharks and stuff. That set me off now. Stupid. Anyway, have a really good Christmas. Enjoy what you're doing. Enjoy the football. Try and enjoy the football. Let's hope we can get some points on the board. If you don't do Christmas, enjoy the break and the time off and everything else. And we will have a pod for you at some point. Next week. Our New Year's resolution is to just get ourselves sorted out so that we can get it out at the start of the week. That's what we set up to do originally.
Yeah. Well, yeah, but times change, things happen, so it's all right. Like we said, we appreciate you guys listening whenever it comes out, and blame the weather in Maine. So if you need something to blame it on.
Yeah, all right, exactly. If you haven't got us to blame it on this. Yeah. Have a good one, Ross. Take care. Have a safe flight. We will see you in a couple of days, I guess.
Yeah, looking forward to it. Happy holidays, everyone.
And we'll see you on the other side of it. So take care. All the best. Merry Christmas, and come on, Reading.